Good evening, depending where you're joining from. This is Dave Aaron, Head of Research for Leading Edge Forum, here on Facebook Live with my great colleague Glenn Robinson. Hi.
Good afternoon, Dave. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Great stuff. Hope you enjoy this, everyone. Glenn is a colleague with deep experience in cloud, amongst other things. He's written a great piece of research here on public cloud adoption, just published, and we're going to discuss that a little. We're going to discuss, in the 21st century, organizations need to be more outside in, need to be more plugged into the cloud in order to be successful, or plugged into the greater, what we call the matrix. And Glenn's going to share with us some of his insights from his work history and from this note. Have I got that right?
Absolutely, yeah. That's what
awesome. And from a diversity perspective, Glenn's from Essex, which is nice. So, Glenn, you've worked in cloud for ages, and you at the coalface. I mean, could you say a little bit about where you've worked, what your experiences are with cloud?
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. So, so firstly, thanks for having me this afternoon. It's great to talk about this subject matter. So I started work with cloud probably 8 or 9 years ago now, where I was the head of IT for a medium-sized media analytics business. So I ran teams of developers and infrastructure guys, some data scientists, and a project management office. So a really diverse set of skills, and we were looking as a business to get into lots of new global markets. We were looking to expand our business quite rapidly, and we were constrained by all the usual types of constraints of provision infrastructure and finding people to run those services for us so we could move our technology into those countries. And then I stumbled across cloud computing in the UK at the time. Amazon Web Service had just come online in about 2008.
Right.
As a global corporation in 2006. So I saw that as a vehicle to really sort of drive agility into what my business was doing. And sure enough, a couple of years of driving a program, we had lots of success through that as well. So it really helped enable my strategy, my IT strategy. We had a lot of success through that program. I then decided to go all in on the cloud myself. So I went and joined Amazon Web Services, and for the next 4.5 years with those guys, I worked across a plethora of different customers from lots of different industries, lots of different size organisations, from large enterprises down to 2 guys building a startup above a laundrette in Dublin, and everything in between, all at different maturity stages in their cloud adoption as well. So lots of understanding on how to enable these corporations and how to really get them going. And today I'm an emerging technology advisor for the Leading Edge Forum. So cloud is very much one of those technologies that a lot of people would say has emerged, but it's still very much evolving all the time at a really, really rapid pace. And it's changing so fast, people do struggle with it, and they struggle to have the right skills within their business to really understand and utilise it for the best outcomes for their organisations. That's part of the area that I'm looking forward to really diving in deeper today and indeed in the future as part of the ADF.
Cool. And I remember in the early days of cloud, I mean, I'm sure you remember this, we've talked about this, people were super cynical about it. There were various responses like, actually it's nothing new, it's just like time sharing on mainframes, it's just like a special form of outsourcing. And then there were people who were like, wow, it's incredibly risky, what a crazy idea. So you must have seen the market evolve quite a lot in the last few years, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and it has, but in 2 different ways. So
right.
I've seen, if we look at the cloud vendors, and today we're talking about public cloud, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So public cloud, the rate of innovation that's happening there has been just exponential, like nothing we've really seen before. At the pace that it's moving, the new services, the new value that we can extract from public cloud into our businesses. When you then look at the organisations that are consuming it, they're moving at a vastly different pace. Some of the fears that you just cited, that they're still prevalent in a lot of organisations today. People still aren't as well informed as we maybe assume or expect them to be. That they have reasons that they can't invest time and energy in becoming better informed. But today that they're still in that position that they need a lot of help. So the cloud services providers have moved forward at an enormous pace, and everyone's really struggling to keep up. I think because of that, there's different layers within public cloud. So to sort of describe that in a really simple term, we have things like infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. So software as a service has always been a really great utility. I used it 8-9 years ago. I used Google Apps in my business. We had email and collaboration tools. immediately, day one, people joined the business, they had access to all our systems and an email address within our corporation anywhere in the world. We can onboard them rapidly. And today, those tools are hugely more evolved. They're a lot more complex and offer a lot more value, as well as actually being quite simple to use and integrate into our core IT systems. But so we see adoption there has been quite steady. Platform is still quite an area that today is still, I don't believe, as well understood as it should be. I think it offers a layer of abstraction that gives organisations portability and it gives them optionality. But organisations still seem to be mainly focused around the infrastructure as a service layer. They're doing that because it looks very similar to what they had before. It's virtual machines in someone else's data centre, but it's consumed via a different way. So not only is it easy for them to adopt, I now see that approach introducing problems and issues. If they treat that service as they would a virtualized environment in their data centers, they're not going to extract the full value from that cloud platform because it can offer so much more if you start really appreciating and bending to the architectural disciplines that cloud platform wants you to adhere to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, just back on the innovation on the market side, I think I should tell everyone, we've just been part of a great LEF study tour. There were 32 of us, clients, digital leaders, LEF staff, and we were kind of blown away, right, by all the kind of the famous names that you'd know, the Googles, Amazons, Microsoft, IBMs, etc. Just the rapid pace of adoption of what we call the matrix, all these different cloud services, right?
Yeah, and I think it's, again, from an outside perspective, a lot of our customers don't maybe fully appreciate the amount of innovation and the absolute focus these companies have on these technologies and what they're going to enable. If you think just forward a couple of years, the amount of new innovation that's going to come out of that R&D and investment that those organisations are making is going to be mind-blowing. It's just going to be amazing. Yeah. People are still sort of stuck today thinking about infrastructure as a service, virtual machines. I think it's so much more than that. That's an important part. And all these new systems are being built on top of infrastructure as a service predominantly. But yeah, I mean, going and walking around with Google and Microsoft and Amazon, even IBM and Salesforce and others that we went and saw where they've got more of a targeted approach to their proposition in public cloud. All of them are betting big on this. So this is going to be, it's huge today, it's just going to be massive tomorrow.
Completely agree. And I think the interesting thing, right, is when you contrast that with what really this note says, which is that adoption is actually maybe a bit less than expected. Could you give us some reflections on why you think that is? Why public? And you know, just to be clear, we're not here just to hype up cloud, right? There are reasons sometimes not to use it. There are challenges. But why do you think that like adoption hasn't been as aggressive as we might expect?
Yeah. So as we sort of started off, I think cloud is still evolving.
Yeah.
It's not where it's going to get to yet by a long way. It's still got a long way to go. So there's no playbook. So you can't pick up a book and it says, where do I start with cloud and where's that going to get me and how do I get there? I think there's lots of components of that, conversations like DevOps. And already maybe we see that evolving, and Google have the principle of site reliability engineering, which is sort of an evolution and a focus. So they don't talk in DevOps. All these sorts of, so it's all still rapidly evolving, and organisations saying, well, so where do I start? And what's the journey for me and where am I going to end? And sometimes they're trying to eat the whole elephant. They're trying to think too big, and the problem statement is so grand. There's other big areas. You talked about security, right? So people have always had this perception of, am I going to trust these third parties with my business critical applications? Oh, and all of a sudden in the press, there's suddenly some big service disruption or something is happening in a cloud somewhere. And then that taints the whole cloud ecosystem as well. Well, when you understand, or I believe, when you understand cloud in a detailed way, you can understand how to best leverage it without being impacted by those sorts of events. How to build even more secure applications in the cloud than you could do in your data center today. I do believe that the cloud providers are investing and have a broad skill set to tackle security issues that our customers today wouldn't have the same amount of investment to achieve that degree of security around their infrastructure and data center assets. So that's a huge piece that our customers can leverage today. But there's still a mindset shift in the security team. The CISO and his direct reports still need to go through that journey themselves. The same point could be said around just architecture. So people have been applying traditional architecture principles to cloud. They pick up their existing free tier stacks today and they drop them into the cloud and they suddenly think, it's not any cheaper, I'm not more reliable, this thing's going wrong, I'm not as scalable as I was before, I'm not getting the same level of performance. Like, what's going on here? And again, like those free tier applications possibly aren't great candidates for the cloud. They're going to require some re-engineering. They're going to need to leverage more of the core services those cloud providers make available to give you that more distributed, scalable architecture that then can get you that level of availability and performance that your business needs, and at a price point that makes economic sense to make that shift. And then possibly lastly, the sort of financial part of this as well is a really key, difficult part for our customers. They're moving from years and years of investing large amounts of capital to suddenly swing into operational expense. So that was something that organisations traditionally would have got beaten up over. So reduce your service contracts. What about our phone bills? Get them down as well. Go and work with those vendors, reduce their costs. With a cloud provider, you can't negotiate with these guys. You're not going to suddenly just go and make them drop their prices by 5-10%. It's already a completely utility play. So you need to think more smartly around how you're consuming those assets. And again, that goes back to architecture. It's about the people with an innate understanding on how to derive the value from those cloud platforms.
Cool. Well, you actually packed a lot of stuff in there. So if I can just unpack one of those things, the kind of security and risk element. Clearly, there's a perception that if it belongs to me, somehow I've got more control over it, I can secure it. If it's out there in the ether, in the cloud, it's risky. But on the other hand, you know, all these guys are working all the time, all the big cloud players, to make things, investing far more than any individual company could in security and risk, and making things as secure as possible. Otherwise, their business is in big trouble, right? Yeah. So, I mean, could you kind of sum up the net on security and risk from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. So if we tackle the security piece first, I think, as we've already said, the cloud providers are securing that infrastructure, that they are building a business, huge businesses, multi-billion-dollar businesses, are making sure that their security posture around the data center, the physical access thereof, and all that good stuff around the physical assets is maintained to such a high standard, they're doing a better job than you. And they provide audited reports that show you to what degree they're doing that. It's then your mindset shift as a consumer of these services to think, well, now I'm moving up a layer. I don't have any control over that. Yes, I need to trust, and I'm looking at their audit reports and they're doing a good job there. But now I need to focus on controls at the application layer. I need to engineer in additional functionality and logging in that layer to make sure that my applications are behaving as they're intended to, that I've got the right levels of security baked in at every level, etc. You're shifting from traditional hardware appliances, firewalls, routers, those sorts of things, that you'd have direct control over the physical device as well as the logical configuration of it, to now more of a sort of an abstracted network substrate that you've now got to configure and control and program and then apply to applications individually. That in itself is quite a mindset shift for customers. And they're saying, wow, how do I go from one to the other? It is absolutely a journey. It's an education. Again, having the right people who do understand those paradigms, who do understand those architectures and can apply them to the right scenarios will mean that you can be more secure. If we look at risk, I think that the real element I'd just add on to that is about compliance. I see a lot of customers, especially large enterprises customers, citing compliance as a reason not to consider cloud. But when you dig into that in real detail with them and say, well, how many of your workloads are actually subjected to regulatory compliance? It's actually a minutia, but if they get that wrong, it means a huge impact to their business. So take those applications out of scope. Don't start there. Like, go after the low-hanging fruit. There's a lot of value to be had elsewhere. And I think historically we've seen this split between greenfield, so all of our net new development, will take them to cloud. They're sort of seen as low risk, and the existing stuff will leave that where it is. But frankly, most organisations today, with any existing legacy IT estate, there's a huge amount of value they're going to be able to unlock in that existing estate, and they have to be going after that aggressively.
Right. So I think I'd just like to add to that, there's obviously risks you have to consider going to the cloud, but I think we both agree there's risks in not going to the cloud. You know, if your competitors get experience with it first, get the agility, get talented people who want to work for them because they're working with new technologies, you've got to counterbalance it with that kind of inertia risk of not moving forward, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. So as we just saw in the study tour, when we're going around venture capitalist firms in Silicon Valley, Those companies are all building on the cloud. They are building massively disruptive products and services that are going to come in and disrupt whole businesses and whole industries. So that's a fundamental shift. So if the large existing incumbents who already are operating in these different industries or markets aren't already considering this, they will get disrupted. And then if you take that forward, again, we're not just talking cloud here, but we're talking about the matrix. So what is the matrix really unlocking? It's unlocking the cloud is unlocking machine intelligence, it's unlocking IoT, all these other emerging technologies that are becoming more and more prevalent. These new organizations that we interact with are baking machine intelligence into every one of their cloud applications. It is an absolute critical part of the application design. That, as a proposition to new consumers of that product, are going to go with that new application, with all that new embedded technology every time over the traditional stuff that's constrained by running in someone's data center.
For sure. So, I mean, obviously risk is one of the reasons, one of the challenges. What do you see as some of the other challenges of adoption of cloud?
So we've talked about finance, we've talked about security. The big one for me, and actually we've just come back from Asia as well, where this really resonated for us, skills.
Right.
So where can you find the people who actually understand this in real depth? So the LEF talks about the principles of a 21st century human. That is an individual within a 21st century organisation who can use these tools to great advantage to take away all the little tasks or stuff that's not going to differentiate them and really add value, really optimise their efficiency. Well, those same people moving up a level that understand cloud, that are starting to understand machine intelligence, that are understanding the impact of the Internet of Things on their business, where are they in these organisations? What skill sets do organisations have, and can they get hold of them? Do they have a culture and a brand in the marketplace that's going to even attract that sort of talent? So we go and work with Google and Amazon and Microsoft, for example, who are working very hard to attract all that top talent, and they can, and they're hoovering up the market. So what's everyone else left with? It's a big fight going on out there right now, and talent is going to be the bit that we're fighting over the most for the next few years, I think.
Yeah, it's a great point. And just to mention, we're working on a piece of research, myself and Richard Davis, called Unleashing Talent, looking not just at talent to do with cloud, but including, because it's obviously talent wars will govern the next decade's winners and losers. We've got a couple minutes left, Glenn. What do you see, if you like, summarising all we've been talking about, the net of where cloud is today and what CIOs should do about it right now?
Yeah, definitely. So we wrote this in our report as well, where we absolutely believe that, and obviously I'm quite biased, but thinking about cloud and making decisions around cloud is going to be the most important decision a CIO makes in 2017. Because if you haven't already, you're sort of missing the boat, and you're already way behind where you should be. If you are, you probably need to be going faster. And there's no doubt, a lot of our customers absolutely want to. And like I say, there's no playbook that exists out there on how to go and do cloud well. It's absolutely something that we're going to be looking at throughout 2017. As the LEF, we're going to be investing time and energy in understanding this. We're working with a lot of the emerging players to understand how they've done cloud and the successes that they've had. And we're going to be bringing that back to our customers. There's a thinking that we already have around this, around how the organisation's structured, what the people need to look like in terms of our 21st century human programme, in terms of 21st century organisation. So bring all that to bear, but these are hard facts and data points that CIOs need to make informed decisions, how I should start, what that journey looks like, and where that's going to get me in time.
Cool. And and I think we talked about this earlier, extending the cloud for Internet of Things, etc., and higher level functions around machine intelligence. It's just, once you're on the train, more and more exciting things come and more challenges come. Yeah. But you have to get engaged in the game, right?
And that's a really critical point to call out, Dave, because I see people say, cloud, I'm going to go and do cloud, and that's it. And you're like, no. Like, cloud is literally just the tipping point that's going to enable your journey into machine intelligence, into the Internet of Things, because then you've got scale, the economics to be able to run fast data processing and run machine intelligence and deep learning, or process loads of sensor data. You can't really do that without cloud, I believe, at the scale that's going to bring your business the sort of value that you're going to need to derive from these investments.
Cool. Well, I know it's a short time, but I found it really interesting. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm just going to wrap up in a second, but is there anything else you wanted to say that we haven't talked about already?
No, not really. I'm just really excited about the work we're going to do. I see talking to our customers, they're all very interested already in the sort of work that we're proposing and the sort of areas we're looking at. So, of course, if anyone wants to get involved, we're always looking for people to come in and add their insight or to challenge what we're seeing in the marketplace. We're all always looking for that sort of input. So if you want to get involved, then please just contact the LEF and we'll be happy to take your input.
Great stuff. Thanks, Glenn. And thanks, everybody. I hope you found this interesting. Just to say, this document on public cloud adoption is available on Leading Edge Forum's website. The recording of this Facebook Live session will be on in a few days. And as Glenn said, love to chat to anyone who'd like to talk about this further and the realities of cloud in your situation. Thank you very much. Take care.
Everyone.